Part 3, we talked about the value of Dialogflow being that you can automatically extract values from the messages that users send, and you can store those values in ManyChat. And one of the other advantages of ManyChat is that you can also create responses using the values that get stored. And you're going to use the ManyChat flow builder for that. Now, before we get into creating responses, I can tell you that sometimes you might not want to deliver an automated response to the user. The user sends a message and they don't even realize there's automation because they're not getting an automated response back. But meanwhile, because you have Dialogflow connected to ManyChat, you're still able to get the values that you need and have those automatically stored. You don't have to deliver a response. You can see here I have just an example intent. I haven't even saved it. And I just put an example training phrase here. I want to buy a house. And you can see that if the user triggers this intent, because I understand that buy is going to, Dialogflow is going to use this entity to extract one of our possible values and then save that in a Dialogflow parameter. And because the Dialogflow parameter name matches a user field we have in ManyChat, we're able to automatically start collecting data about the user without even responding to them. So this is really helpful because you can use Dialogflow to get the information you need and have that automatically stored in user profiles and then follow up with them live. And you'll use ManyChat to then see all of the user details and be able to respond to them intelligently. So I think it's important to note that just because you're using Dialogflow and ManyChat, it doesn't have to be to deliver automated responses. It could just be used to get the data that you need to then follow up with the user. Now, excuse me, now we're going to look here at this intent, and if I scroll down, you can see that there is a response area. And if the user triggers this intent, the bot isn't going to respond because no response has been defined. Let's say I do want to define a response. I just want to acknowledge that we got the user's message. It's kind of the minimum viable automation is what I would call it. It's the easiest way to deliver an automated response to a user without without trying to deliver an accurate response. Well, Dialogflow has what's called as a default fallback intent. So if you don't have an intent set up, or you don't want to deliver an automated response to the user, just don't include your responses in these intents. Capture all the data that's going to help you automatically populate a user profile so that you can then follow up on that lead and have all of that actionable data right there for you. And if you wanted to add even a simple response, here's the default. This is going to get triggered if Dialogflow doesn't understand the user's message. And you can see I have a text response here that says, thanks for your message. We'll get back to you soon. And I can add more than one message. And because this is just one text response, Dialogflow will randomly pick from one of these messages. An agent will get back to you, get back with you as soon as possible. We appreciate your message. And so the user can keep messaging the bot, and you can keep sending one of these random auto responses to the user. That may be a strategy you want to do. Maybe you want to have no response at all, and the user thinks that they're chatting live. And I think that's a better strategy. I would rather, if I'm not ready to respond to a user, I would just collect all the information I need with Dialogflow, with AI, have that stored in ManyChat, and then follow up with them. Then create my responses after. I wouldn't necessarily respond this way, but that is an option for you. Now, let's say I do want to respond. You can create responses in Dialogflow here and deliver that response to the user. I like to actually redirect my responses to ManyChat. because with ManyChat I can create different types of funnels. I can look to see if I have the data that I need, and if I don't have the data that Dialogflow is able to provide me with, then I can start to collect additional data and send the user down a funnel until I get the data that I need to be able to respond, right? So the way to do that is, if you're familiar with ManyChat, is you can create different flows. And if ManyChat if Dialogflow doesn't understand a message, then it's going to trigger this default fallback response. And instead of responding to the user, here I'm going to respond to them with this flow that I created. I just called it fallback. I might just say to the user, if I don't understand the message, that here are some things we can help you with immediately. And you can see I can visually define those things and just give them a menu of options. It's just a gallery. Items for sale, recently sold, open houses, meet our agents, and then if they want to chat live, I might have a flow for that as well. So you can see human redirect. And what I'll do is, let's say for if they trigger this fallback in Dialogflow and I want to respond with this gallery that will guide them with buttons that says click here, then all I need to do is I need to put what's called as a custom payload response into a Dialogflow intent. So for this default, if I want to redirect, you can see here I have a small bit of JSON code, and I've put it into sort of a clipboard here. And I just need to select that and paste that in here. And you can see that when this Dialogflow intent is triggered, it's going to respond with a specific ManyChat flow, and there's going to be an ID here. Now we need to get that ID for the flow. So where does that come from? Well, if you click into the flow, you'll see up here in the URL that we have this information. We don't want this and anything with the dashes. We just want anything after the dashes. What we have with the dashes here, this is the folder. We don't want to reply with a folder, we just want to reply with a flow. So we can select anything from content, and then you have a series of digits like this, and you just select that, and then you can just paste that into here. And then, so when users trigger this Dialogflow intent, it's going to then respond with this flow. So, we can just save it, and that's it. Now, sometimes it's a pain to just type this out in this format, which is a nice clean format for JSON. And so you can see I had just selected it here. I just copied it and pasted it to a clipboard, and then I just switch out the flow ID in here. There's also, Janice provides documentation, explains that you can create text responses, and you can also reply with one of these custom payloads that will redirect to a ManyChat flow. And you can see here I could just copy this little snippet of JSON code to my clipboard and then just paste it into the Dialogflow response. So it is a custom payload. And you can actually combine responses if you want. Like if you wanted to have a text response, that says, So let me think. So you could just put that here and drag it up, and then you can have a text response followed by a redirect to ManyChat. But I don't think you necessarily need to do that. I like to handle all my response logic in ManyChat because it just makes it easier to manage with conditions, and you can create conditional responses in its flow builder. So I'll just save that. And you can see here that one of the things I like to do is I have all of these intents that I've created, and let's go to that lead one. Actually, let's go to this welcome intent. So if the user says, what's up, or hi, or hey, and you can see here I have a whole bunch of different ways that users might say hello, or just getting started. Anything that you would want to where you would want to direct the user when they just send some kind of welcome or greeting to the bot. You can see here I'm redirecting to a flow. And this one redirects to, let's go back here. You can see here this one is going to redirect to this flow. and there's the ID for the flow. And actually, I want to, it doesn't match, so I'm going to need to, this is my idea here is to just to link to it like this. There, and then click Save. Let's look at one more flow just as an example, but you can see that what I've done here is I have some general flows, like some top level flows. Like I have a main menu, a human redirect, a fallback if the bot doesn't understand, and these are like common flows, and they're the root level. But I've also created a folder called responses, and you'll see here that I have a number of flows that I'm working on. Real estate lead, real estate patients, real estate offer. And you see these names, the names of these flows, right? They all match the names of my intents. So I've named my intents the same as my ManyChat flows, and that just makes it really easy to manage. I know that if users are going to trigger this, let's look for it, lead. So if they're going to trigger this dialog flow intent with a message, right? And then it's going to redirect to a flow. And I need to find that flow really quickly. I can just then go look here, and I can search for it by name. I can do that up here, but it happens to be the top flow here, and that way, a ManyChat response flow is easily. I can easily connect the name of the flow to the name of the intent. I get the ID for the flow by clicking into it, and that ID will, this is when this intent is triggered. This is the flow that will load for our response. So just to recap, you don't need a response in order to be able to extract data from a message and have that stored inside of ManyChat. But if you do add a response, then it's just a custom payload with a redirect to a ManyChat flow. And a good strategy is to name your ManyChat flows to give them the same names as your dialog flow intents, and so that you can easily match things up.